There is some big news and excitement in the stamp collecting world at the moment. The most expensive stamp in the world is up for sale. The British Guiana 1 cent Magenta is commonly described as the Mona Lisa of stamps, one of a kind with a fascinating history, and it's expected to get another record-breaking sale at auction, anywhere between $10 to $15 million. Now, this stamp, along with a block of inverted jennies, is going up for sale June 8th, 2021 in New York City. It will likely attract the world's attention and highlight our wonderful hobby on mainstream media, which it does every single time. And the last time it was sold in 2014 was no exception to this.
For its size and weight, the most valuable item in the world. It's the only one of its kind.
The stamp was printed in 1856 at a former British colony in South America, which is now the Republic of Guiana.
Die 1 Cent Magenta Briefmarke, gedruckt 1856 in British Guiana.
The auction started at $4.5 million. But within 2 minutes, it fetched a world record price.
It happened here in New York. The 1856 British Guiana 1 cent Magenta sold to an anonymous buyer.
$9.5 million US, setting a new world record.
It's the 4th time that the same stamp has broken the same auction price record. It's a long history.
That is nearly 1 billion times the face value of the stamp. In fact, it's the only British colonial stamp that Queen Elizabeth doesn't own.
Now, this doesn't happen frequently at all. It was last sold in 2014, but it's only really changed hands around 8 times in its 165-year history. So I'm excited to see what it goes for and what kind of attention it gets. But I wanted to learn more. I want to learn more about the auction, the process around the sale of it. Does this have an impact on philately and more? So I invited Michael and Charles from the award-winning podcast and YouTube channel Conversations with Philatelists to have a bit of a discussion and see what we should be expecting for the upcoming auction. So let's chat about the world's most expensive stamp and its upcoming auction on this episode of #Philately. Michael, Charles, welcome to #Philately on the Exploring Stamps YouTube channel. I'm super excited to have you on because I've been on Conversations with Philatelists like almost 8-9 months ago. Time does fly. I think it was episode 8. So, like I said, I'm really excited to have you on. And most of my viewers should already know who you are. But for those who don't yet know who you are, please give us an introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on, Graham. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Michael Cortese. I'm the Vice President of Noble Spirit Coins and Stamps. We're a coin and stamp auction house or auction company in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. And we sell 99-cent no reserve auctions on eBay. We've got about 15 employees, and we've been doing this for about 25 years now.
And again, just to echo what Michael said, thank you so much for having us. It's great. You were there like right at the ground level of Conversations with Philatelists. So to be able to come on with you now is really exciting. My name is Charles Epting. I'm the president of H.R. Harmer Auction House in Midtown Manhattan. We were founded in 1940. Our history goes back a bit further in the UK, but we're one of America's oldest philatelic auction houses. We've been doing strictly stamp auctions for 81 years now, I suppose. And I've been with the company myself 5 years. I got to know Michael through the Young Philatelic Leaders Fellowship through the APS. And that's how we put together Conversations with Philatelists in the height of the lockdown last year. And that's how we kind of got our start in the virtual philatelic world after both cutting our teeth in the business for a little while.
Brilliant. So you both must have been extremely excited and surprised, perhaps, by the announcement that the 1 cent Magenta is going up for sale. Who is likely to purchase this? Is this a stamp collector? Is this a philanthropist? Is this an investor? Can a museum bid on this? Who are the people that will be bidding?
It's a big question.
$8 million question.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're seeing a trend where more people who are into philanthropy and more people who are into investing, if you will, are buying more rare items like this. I think one of the previous owners of the plate block of Jenny's, the plate block of 4, had been investors in China, I believe. So you're seeing that we're just buying valuable items for valuable items' sake. So you're seeing a lot more of that happen.
I agree, and that goes back even to I was doing some research recently. H.R. Harmer sold a block of the Jenny on behalf of Princeton University in the 70s, and that was bought by an investment group of 10 people who all chipped in, their percentage. So I could see there being people right now behind the scenes, cumulatively gathering their resources to try and buy this as an investment group. Because the issue with it is, if somebody collects British Guiana, if somebody's a traditional philatelist of British Guiana, obviously you do have to have a fair bit of money to collect some of the other early issues. But the overlap between traditional stamp collectors and people who can spend 7 or 8 figures on a stamp is relatively small. And there are less and less generalist collectors of the world. There's not really any Ferraris or Liechtensteins or Lilies left anymore. Who there's a few. I'm not saying that it won't go to a stamp collector, because there are still people who want worldwide rarities, and this stamp has been owned by so few people that you're really adding your name to a distinguished list. But I wouldn't be surprised, like Michael said, to see it go the investment group route. So who knows what people view as a sound investment right now. But I certainly see it either going the philanthropist route or the investment group route. I'm not sure how many. If you had a Venn diagram of people who collect classic British Commonwealth and people who have $10 million, I'm not sure there's a lot of overlap. The British Guiana is not really a postage stamp anymore. It's been elevated. It's something more than a postage stamp. It
broke through that category and is now with valuable jewels and other fine art. Is that what
exactly? These other collectibles, these other pieces of art. Again, that you don't buy it as a postage stamp. You buy it as the British Guiana. It is singular.
Hot debate. Always a hot debate. I've got a couple of them. One, is this an ugly stamp? I'm hearing people saying this is the worst, this is the ugliest stamp out there. Some say it's absolutely beautiful. Michael, what are your thoughts?
That's a tough one. When you look at it from where it's been and what it's done and who it's met, you've got to really appreciate everything behind it. So I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder here. It's really those who want it and who can't afford it. It's the most gorgeous thing.
You're looking at its personality, and you're seeing beauty in the stamp's personality, which is global. Okay, well, Dolls, what do you think? Is it ugly?
I don't think it's as ugly as a lot of people make it out to be. It does have a great color. I think that these early primitive stamps that were printed on colored paper like that really have a lot of character. So the magenta color itself, I love. I'm not sure who gets to be the arbiter of beauty in this hub. For me, I agree with Michael. But I do think that this stamp is beautiful in its own right. I don't think you have to just look at the story and the mystique and the intrigue to say it's beautiful. It's a piece of paper that's 165 whatever years old. How beautiful do we expect it to look? The fact that this thing even survived in the first place is a miracle.
And its presentation as well. I think this past weekend, Graham, you tweeted out a photo of comparing the two presentations of the stamp and how they were presented to the public, and it's how you display it as well that gives it its appearance.
To go with that, right? I mean, I was quite surprised because when I went and saw the stamp at the Postal Museum in DC, it was in a dark room. And
you weren't even really sure if you saw it or not.
You don't know what I was looking at. You could have cut out a cereal box in the shape of of the stamp, because I saw nothing. I looked through the little dark window and it was, a shadow I was looking at. But then again, we're seeing it now being displayed in London leading up to the sale. Sotheby's
the photography that Sotheby's has had is spectacular.
Absolutely. This thing is lit up. It's beautiful. I question the amount of light it's getting from a preservation standpoint. But there it is, and it's in all its glory. So, I mean, when I started stamp collecting or going into philately a little more intensely just 4 or 5 years ago, I thought it was an ugly stamp. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was an ugly stamp. It didn't make sense to me. It's grown on me quite a bit. Maybe it's an acquired taste in the philatelic world. But yeah, I'm with you guys there as well.
Again, there's different standards. I see the blue nose behind you. Everyone agrees that the blue nose is a spectacle. Again, that sort of fits in. But the magenta, I don't think you can. I don't think you can deride it for being ugly. I think that's just an unfair criticism to level against something so significant to our hobby.
Yeah.
Well, another hot debate. Like the owners have been signing the back of this thing. Stuart Weitzman recently signed, he put a stiletto and his initials on the back of the stamp because he's a famous shoe designer, of course. A lot of people saying that's defacing the stamp. Others are saying that it's adding to its provenance. It's adding to its, interest. What are your thoughts, Michael?
This is a tough one, definitely. It is such a hot topic that people are so divided on, and I feel like there are very few people that kind of go right down the middle. And it's I mean, as someone who sells material to people who will then own this material, I feel like it's it's up to the person who owns the material.
Do you think it's adding to it? Do you think
adding to it? I'm not sure, but Charles, I know you want to talk about this.
Michael, you're being so diplomatic about it.
I really am. I really do want to be as diplomatic here as possible because it's such a significant item for our hobby, and people feel so strongly about it. But the fact that they feel so strongly about it just shows their passion, not only for the stamp but for the hobby itself. And some people feel if someone owns the stamp, they can do whatever they want to it. But really, this is also a historical item that other people will own in the future. Maybe they have, they should have the wherewithal to treat it as something that isn't really theirs, but it's an item of history.
I love that he signed it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant. I think it adds so much to the stamp. I am 100% in favor of signature. Because this hobby, sort of, my interest in it is twofold. My passion for the hobby is twofold. There's the item itself. The stamp was printed in British Guiana in 1856. It served its time when it was on a letter and then ended up in a collection. And then that part of its history comes to a close. That part of its history is a closed book. And for me, the history since then is even more exciting. When I get a cover to the auction house that has Ferrari's little purple trefoil. I don't know if many listeners know this, but Count Ferrari, most of his items in his collection, he would put a little purple hand stamp on them. And it's on the front of the cover usually. You can see it from the front. And a lot of people might think that's defacing a rare cover or whatnot. To me, the purple trefoil means this is ex-Ferrari. Even Arthur Hind, one of the greatest collectors of all time, used adhesive tape on... this is before hinges, or before cover hinges, I suppose, or this was just a quirk of Hind. He would use like cloth tape to stick the cover to an album page. And the adhesive in the tape does not come off. So we get covers sometimes that are ex-Hind that have these big splotches of adhesive on the side of the cover. You could look at it as damage. You could look at it as being compromised. To me, that's proof that Arthur Hind owned it. So I think that this portion, the history of an item after it, again, served its time, is as important as the history of the item itself. So seeing the back of this stamp and seeing that shoe and knowing that that's Stuart Weitzman's connection to it, I think is incredible. Part of what makes philately so great is that we have this record of who owned something before us, and we can leave our own little record for whoever owns it after us. So I'm super pro signature. Ferrari putting it on the front of the cover, maybe you should have put it on the back. I don't know. But absolutely put your stamp on it, put your signature on it. When I see a stamp signed Block or George B. Sloan or someone like that, I just think that's the coolest thing in the world. That's what gets me so excited about this hobby. And for Stuart to leave his mark on it, I say 1,000% yes.
You might be convincing me here, because I typically cringe when I see this kind of stuff. I just go, no, you're ruining it. And Stuart Weitzman's signature is taking up a lot of real estate. So I personally just get nervous. Also, I mean, maybe by the time I do end up owning this, there won't be enough space for me to sign it. So there's little things like that that really keep me up.
Michael and I will leave you a gap between our figures. I'm going to say something, and I don't want to get flack for saying this, but philatelically, the Magenta is not.
I know what you're going to say, too.
I don't want to say it's not important, but to a stamp collector, it's much less important than its value as this icon. As the stamp has become a spokesperson for the hobby. How many people pick up the New York Times, pick up the Wall Street Journal, see that Stuart's selling this stamp, and maybe their memories jog. Maybe they collected stamps as a kid and they're thinking about it for the first time in decades. If there was any historical damage, we wouldn't go sign our names on the Declaration of Independence, admittedly. But the Magenta, its role right now, its purpose right now, is to promote philately. It is no longer a stamp for its own sake. It is serving a bigger purpose. And if Stuart's signature helps contribute to that mission, then I'm all for it.
It's a fantastic point.
No, I'll take that. Wow, that's fantastic. So it really is benefiting the hobby. The sale of this stamp is an event that benefits philately somehow, right? It promotes it in mainstream media. It gets spoken about more. Stamp collecting ends up becoming something that people briefly get to chat about, right?
I really do think that I do think that it will have a ripple effect. We might not see the benefit immediately. Catalog values might not skyrocket, or they won't skyrocket just because of the sale of this stamp. But I think that anytime you have a stamp in the news, it plants seeds, and who knows when those seeds will sprout and germinate.
Yeah. So a big question there then, just to clarify, you are saying that the sale of this stamp has absolutely no impact on the stamp market itself. We've already said this is broken through the category of stamps. You're saying that this is definitely promoting the hobby of stamp collecting, but the sale price at the end of the day doesn't have any indication, or doesn't provide any indication of the general stamp market. Is that right?
I agree that the impact of the sale will be intangible and will presumably not have a direct impact on the market. I think whether US #1 sells for $100 or $200 or $300 is not dependent on the sale of the Magenta. Yeah. And I do think that once you get into the stratosphere, once you're talking $5, $10, $15 million, it's so detached from your everyday Bourse dealer or your eBay dealers or even your auction houses that I don't see people drawing trends in the stamp market from one auction realization.
Because it's not like rare art. This item stands alone in the hobby almost. It's not like
painting
you can
selling in the millions every couple of days, I'd imagine.
Exactly, and those items are affecting the prices of the other paintings that are. But this item it's
in
unique.
its own universe.
Yeah, it's unique in so many definitions.
It's so far in its own orbit that I don't think you'll see a penny black. I don't think it's linked like the stock market. I think that you've got the Magenta doing its own thing over here, and then you've got the rest of the hobby.
Yeah. If the Magenta sells for $20 million, that doesn't mean all of a sudden that the value of all stamps will now double.
Yeah, so we should be rooting for a good final price here, but not because it's going to improve my stamp collection, right, value. It's going to improve this hobby. It's going to showcase this hobby. The more limelight it gets, the better it is for all of us.
I say this a lot. I've probably said it on the podcast a lot, but a rising tide lifts all boats. And if the Magenta does well, I think the hobby will do well.
Now, I want to ask you some questions about the auctioning process. But before I get there, Charles, I understand that you've actually met the current owner who's letting go of the stamp, Stuart Weitzman.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when I was first getting involved in the hobby, I was invited to attend Monaco Phil. And I was staying at the Hotel Hermitage, which is a beautiful hotel in Monaco. I was waiting for some friends or something. I was in the lobby, didn't really know. I was kind of a deer in the headlights this whole trip. And I was just standing there. And this nice gentleman, you know, older than I am, obviously, walked up to me. I'd never seen him before, but he looked like a stamp collector. So he said, are you here for the stamp show? And here I am in my first big stamp show. I've been to, I think, one APS show at this point. And I was like, yeah, I'm here for the stamp show. And he was like, oh, what do you collect? And I was like, I'm gonna impress this guy. I collect a stamp that catalogs 25 cents, which is the minimum value that Scott will give to something. So I was like, I collect this stamp from 1933. It's a 3-cent purple for the National Recovery Administration. And I'm acting kind of like a big shot because I don't yet realize. It's one of those things where when you don't know who you're talking to, you can't be starstruck. So I'm telling him about my stamp from 1933, and he goes, oh, I have something from 1933 as well. And I was like, all right, like a lot of things from 1933, no big deal. I'm still completely missing the point at this point. And he goes, it's not a stamp though, it's a coin. And I'm not a coin collector. I was like, that's nice. You have a coin from 1933. And he goes, it's a Walking Liberty double eagle. And I looked him in the eye and I said, there's only one of those. which is not a great thing to say to the person who owns. He goes, yeah, he goes, there is one of them and it's mine. And I said, but it's at the New York Historical Society. He goes, I know, I lent it to them. My jaw dropped and he said, well, what do you think of my stamp? And I said, is your stamp the magenta one? And he said, yeah, what do you think of it? And I just said, like, oh my goodness, Mr. Weissman, I didn't realize who you were. And he goes, he basically said something like, it doesn't matter who I am. I want to hear about you. Like he goes, I'm not a collector. I own one stamp. I want to hear about you. And he was so nice. And then later that same weekend, my friends and I were standing and he was sitting at the bar with a cocktail napkin, drawing shoes on it. He was sketching out new designs. And when he finished, he like put one in his pocket because I don't know, maybe that got turned into a shoe. And he started telling my friends and I these stories about how when he was, and Stuart told me all this openly, so I assume it's not a secret, but he was in high school, I believe. And there was this girl who everyone had a crush on, even though she was not the most attractive girl in the class. It was because she wore these red high heels. And he talked about how these red heels, when he was a young man, showed him the power that footwear can have, especially over the male psyche, I suppose. And that was what led him to want to design shoes. And he would just tell us these stories that were incredible. And he was just like one of us. He was totally not the guy who owned the world's most expensive postage stamp. I guess the final chapter is in 2019. The Smithsonian had a big event, a big fundraiser that he was at. And that's where I was able to get my picture with two of my friends and Stuart. Well, we didn't think to get a picture with him in Monaco. We were just so enthralled by his stories that, 4 years later, we were like, this time we have to get the picture to prove that any of this actually happened.
Wow, that's a brilliant story. And it's a famous picture. I've seen it a few times on social media. I think I've seen it in Lynn's Stamp News.
It was in Lynn. I was like, that's finally made it into Lynn's because I was with Stuart. But I can't express that he came over to me, a nobody. I mean, I'm a nobody in the hobby now. Back then, I was really a nobody. Nobody knew who I was, and I was just standing there looking totally lost and awkward.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Charles.
Again, the takeaway is that this is a good person. This is a really decent man who fulfilled his childhood dream of owning these rare things, and now he's giving somebody else a chance to do it. How cool is that?
So, hey, if I woke up tomorrow morning and I wanted to sell my $9.5 million stamp, what exactly would I do?
Well, so I think the fact that he's going through Sotheby's is proof that this item is sort of beyond stamp. Because if you have a nice stamp collection, you call Harmer's or Siegel or Kelleher or Rumsey or one of the big philatelic auction houses, or you go to a dealer, maybe a specialized dealer, depending on what you collect. Sotheby's is, alongside Christie's, they're just sort of these standard bearers of auction and have been for hundreds of years. So I think that the fact that he's going through Sotheby's, who does not specialize in postage stamps, is great from a publicity standpoint, but really does hammer home this point that it's not a stamp anymore. It's something else, whatever you want to call it. Presumably, they were very well acquainted with this item because when something sells breaks the $9 million mark, the whole auction world, whether you're a stamp dealer or not, is going to take notice. And I presume that they just got to work on how to promote the heck out of this thing, which they've been doing a fantastic job with. I think the promotion is really the key. We usually don't announce our sales until 6 weeks out. Maybe they announce this thing months and months before the sale to really milk it for all it's worth, which is again, I think that's the key. And then you start thinking about who's going to buy this thing. You start reaching out to people who maybe they're connoisseurs of wine or cars or art, and you try and convince them, do you want to add a postage stamp to your portfolio?
Yeah, I liked that quote you said he had, is I'm not a collector, I've got one stamp. That really, kind of shows that
it's
anyone
no longer
can...
true. He has 5 stamps now.
I know.
It seems to have 0, yes. But
yeah.
I say, let's reverse that. I am interested in bidding for this thing, right? I have accumulated a large, sum of money. By the way, you see the Mega Millions is almost like 400 million. So
you could buy a couple of Magentas.
You can buy a few. So I mean, the timing is just too perfect. I think this is indication that I need to,
I may go out and buy a couple of tickets later on today.
I might have to, just because of this. I'm feeling inspired. But now, say I want to go purchase this thing. I want to go bid. What do I exactly need to do? How do I get into the room with a paddle or start, be involved online? What hurdles do I need to jump over?
At least on our end, and again, we're not dealing in the $9 million, $15 million range. We're sometimes dealing in the $100,000 range or $500,000 range. We're going to need to see some credit references, and obviously, if somebody's wanting to spend 8 figures on a stamp, they're going to need to provide some references. I assume that whoever is stepping up to buy this thing probably has some connections in the art or collectibles or auction world. I would hope, again, unless it's the Mega Millions scenario where your average guy on the street just happens to come into a couple $1 million. But I would assume that they would either approach the auction house directly with some references, maybe with bank statements even. I don't think that's out of the question, to prove that they do have the funds to back up their purchase. Or alternately, I could see somebody going through an agent or through a dealer who has that reputation and credit built up, so that and maybe the buyer could also want to mask their identity. That's also quite likely that we won't know. I don't know if it ever came out who bought the Tyrannosaurus Rex that was on display in Rockefeller Center a couple of months ago. I know that there was a lot of mystery surrounding that buyer. It could be somebody on the telephone. So I could see a buyer as well, sort of, it would also keep their identity secret from the auction house, potentially. You might not want to play your hand too early. You might not want to approach the auction house and say, hey, I've got $20 million to spend on this stamp. You might want to be a little bit more subtle about it, which is why I could see somebody going through a dealer, telling the dealer, hey, my max bid is 20 million, but, play it quiet until the night of the sale. So there's a lot of different ways you could approach it. Again, you could easily contact the auction house directly, but I could see people being a bit more covert and maybe not expressing their interest until the last minute.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And then, like you said, it could be anonymous at the end of the day. In fact, it's probably very likely at the end of the day, this is going to be purchased by Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous.
Correct.
And we may never know who this person is until the next sale, which could be anywhere between, 1 to 40 years from now. So
it could just vanish. It could just disappear for decades until it comes up for sale again. It would be unfortunate, but it's not unlikely, I would say.
Or they could purchase it anonymously to keep it at the Smithsonian. It's all different kind of motivations. We don't really know what the motivation of the person who buys the stamp is going to be until they have it.
Interesting. So what actually happens at the end? That hammer, strikes down, and let's, for sake of simplicity, it's $10 million, and I've won it at $10 million. What do I do now? Do I just write the check, or the dealer pays them, and I got to figure out how to pay the dealer?
It's a good question. The transportation of an item like this is obviously key. If somebody buys an item for $1,000 in our sale, they mail us a check, we mail them the item, and everyone's happy. Something like a $10 million stamp is going to require a bit more.
You saw Erwin Weinberg with the suitcase, handcuffed to himself, and something kind of like that, I'd assume. Maybe not as blunt.
I could see there being an armored car involved. Maybe the person does pay immediately. Maybe they have to wire the money, so it takes a little bit of time. But I could see the handoff being a bit of a production. That wouldn't surprise me to get that photo op.
So is that 10 million then? That includes any other fees that I need to take care of, or
no? There would be a buyer's premium. I'm not sure what Sotheby's is, but I would guess it's around 20. A lot of the art auction houses are up around 20%. So you buy it for 10 million. There's a $2 million premium added onto that. And, God forbid you're a New York State resident without a resale permit. You're going to be paying another 8% sales. So imagine if sales tax was $800,000. You probably want to be a dealer in that case if you're buying it to avoid the. But then again, you have to sell it again. So you're easily looking at another. If you buy it for 10 million, count on another 2.5 in just fees and tax.
So let's talk a bit about this value, right? This is interesting. Right now, it is said to be between, or it's estimated value, $10 to $15 million. I want to ask who comes up with that estimated number, because back in 2014. It was widely publicized that the estimation was $20 million, and then it didn't even get half of that. Yet everyone was still excited because it broke records and it was fantastic and all that. But I went, wait a minute, that didn't meet even half of its expectation. Isn't that bad? So who comes up with the number between $10 to $15 million?
First, you get a roulette wheel. No, Sotheby's will have consulted, the leading experts, and with something like this, it's sort of a blessing and a curse to have the precedent of 7 years ago. If something's been off the market since the 50s or the 70s, you can kind of take a shot in the dark, like that 20 million figure. The last time it sold, I think there's a bit more room for error because you're dealing with something that is that has no real history of sale. If you're selling an inverted Jenny, you can look at what the inverted Jenny sold for a couple of months ago at Siegel. You can look at what a couple of them sold for last year, and there's a nice trend line. But when you've got massive gaps in such a small sample size, I think that there is more forgiveness.
Yeah.
This estimate of 10 to 15 million, I think it's really towing the line between optimism and reality. I think there's a real fine line there where you don't want to have it sell for half of what you estimated it at again, but you also don't want to project that the market has decreased for this stamp. Really a stamp like this, the market could change day to day. Somebody could wake up on the wrong side of the bed and decide they don't want to buy it for $10 million. It's something like this. The clientele, if you have a US #1 on cover, if you have a nice blue nose, if you have a penny black, there's going to be thousands of people who want to own that. So if one of them doesn't show up to the auction, there's a safety net to guarantee that it sells for what it's worth. When you're dealing with something like the Magenta, where, again, it's such a small number of people who are even capable of buying it, much less interested in buying it, I think that I think that these estimates are somewhat of a shot in the dark. I would hope that it reaches this estimate. I think that it is equally likely that it will exceed the estimate as falls short of the estimate. And I don't think you can really hold anyone too accountable, again, given that small sample size. I think that the experts at Sotheby's and certainly the outside experts they consulted will have done their homework. And this is, maybe it is just a bit of a gut feeling too. It doesn't have to be rooted in scientific precision. It can just be a shot in the dark.
Yeah, the fact that the estimate was 20 million when it first went on the market recently in 2014, and now it's come down. The top is estimated at $5 million less. It doesn't mean the value of the stamp has decreased by $5 million. It just means that they have a more accurate idea based on what it's sold for before. Maybe they've gauged some interested parties on what it may sell for this time, and they're more confident that it will sell between that $10 to $15 million mark. Whereas, yeah, Charles said before, when you have a unique item that hasn't been on the market in years, decades, it's really hard to gauge where it's going to land, who's going to want it, and how much they're going to want it for.
We're all just going to be holding our breaths on the night of June 8th. It's just all going to come down to June 8th.
Yeah, this is all speculation.
Right. It's like a presidential election where you spend months and months analyzing the charts and this and that, but then it just comes down to, how people wake up one morning.
This is incredible. I mean, I've got the Linz stamp news from March 29th with the announcement. The 1 cent Magenta, as we've been talking about, is going between 10 to 15 estimate, right? 10 to 15 million. Same with the double eagle coin, right? It's 10 to 15 million. And then you've got, I think it's the inverted Jenny is going for what? The block. Do you guys recall?
Is it 5?
I think it's in the 5 range. It's a bargain.
5 to 7. I think it's 5 to 7 million.
Yeah.
This is an incredible auction. They call it the Sweet Treasures auction, of course. It's an incredible event. So I'm pumped. I'm super excited to see what happens. And I know it'll be the talk of the philatelic community for quite a while.
Yes.
And of course, the coin community. Just in case there's coin collectors watching this as well. But I want to ask you a couple questions. I want to go around the room quick. I'm a very generous guy. If I was to give you each $15 million, okay, only 15, would you go and spend that money on the stamp, or would you rather spend it on something else, non-philatelic or philatelic? Michael, what is it?
I wouldn't venture outside of philately, but I'd probably spend it on different stamps. Not because I don't think this stamp is significant, not because I don't think that this stamp is unique and not deserving of that, but knowing myself, knowing what appeals to me. Personally, as a dealer, from a business standpoint, I'd be looking to spend the money equally amongst things I can then resell. But personally, you know, and I know this might sound strange, but the unique plate block of 4 inverted Jenny seems more appealing to just my personality than the Magenta.
You emailed us this question, and I have labored over it. This is the question I was most looking forward to, because my initial gut reaction was absolutely not. And then I thought about it long and hard for the last couple of days. This question has because I pictured myself in the room watching that stamp being called. And if I had a $15 million bill in my back pocket, I don't think I'd be able to keep my hand down. I would say, absolutely, this is what I would spend it on. Yes, I would. Because I know myself well enough to know that I couldn't pass up the opportunity. This is, whether you think it's beautiful or ugly, whether you like the shoe or not, whether you collect British Commonwealth or whatever it is, it's the Magenta. How could you be in the room watching it sell with $15 million and not just put your hand up and keep it up? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
That was going to be my answer as well. If I'm in the room and I have $15 million, I'm a very irresponsible bidder. I'm super irresponsible in the bidding place. As soon as the competition takes on, and I have to win.
So if it was available at retail for $15 million and I had $15 million, I don't think I would buy it.
So for you, it's the appeal of the auction.
It would be being in the room, locking eyes with other people. The hand would go up. But if it was just available, if the hunt was taken out of it, it would become much less desirable to me.
Well, because if it's available, that means that it's available, that nobody else is buying it.
Right.
But if it's up for sale and
if
it's
you
an
only
auction,
have this little window, if you have a couple of minutes to stick your hand up, I'm in.
Yeah.
But
it is
responsibly, I would
philately.
say I wouldn't purchase it. I mean, if I would have to stop myself from going into the auction house and taking part, and I wouldn't purchase it. I would want to use the money towards, heck, maybe making another 10 seasons of exploring stamps or something else, right? But put me in the room. It's
done. And the other thing, even if you flipped it and lost money, you still end up with what, 12 or 13 million more than you had at the start of it. And you get to put your signature next to Stuart's shoe.
But there would be pressure there to give all the money you know, because Stuart Weitzman really sets that example, right? Give the money away, you know, to charities, and I would have to fall into that. I wouldn't be the one person who goes, oh well, no, I'm pocketing it. It's
exactly.
good.
Stuart just gave the $15 million to help people. Yeah, that is a good point.
Okay, another important question. Let's go around the room for a friendly wager of lunch. The loser is going to pick up lunch when the three of us have the opportunity to see each other in person. What is the final number, including buyer's premium? What is that final number going to be to the dollar? I've been calling Michael first. Let's go Charles first.
Oh, no. I wish you called me first on every other question.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 12.4.
All right. Michael.
So 12.4 means it sells for 10.
Yeah. At the end of the day, what is the price?
Around there. I didn't do the math on what the exact premium is.
Yeah.
All said and done, that's my gut.
12.4. Okay. I was gonna say 13.7.
Ooh. All right. I'm gonna go on the lower end. I'm gonna say it's 11.1. So there we go. That's a nice little range. The person furthest, whether it's positive or negative, furthest will pick up lunch next time we get to see each other in person. I'm actually going to ask my viewers to go ahead and do the same thing in the comments. What number do you think this is going to end up selling for, including buyer's premium? And the winner, make sure you do this before the day of auction. The winner is going to get bragging rights. I'm going to pin that comment to the top of the comments, and you'll be known as the estimator that can really narrow it down. And Sotheby's might be giving you a phone call next time this becomes available.
And let us know who the winner is so that Michael and I can send them a gift card so that we can treat them to lunch.
Yeah.
We'll do
it. in addition to the bet amongst ourselves, Michael and I will take care of the winner. I'm curious.
I'm very curious. Well, gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'm so excited about this auction. I can't wait for it to come. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Honestly, it's one of these things I've been looking forward to since the announcement, but then I get distracted by work or personal life stuff. And then the three of us talk and it's like, wait a minute, this is real.
Yeah.
We're less than a month away. This is on the horizon. So, Graham, thank you so much for letting us be a part of this. This is just fantastic, and I hope that the three of us can be texting on the night of the sale so that we can again the bragging rights and the lunch are hugely at stake here.
Absolutely, this is big. This is bigger than the 9.5 or the 15 million. This is bragging rights, guys. This is serious.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, can you please give us a plug for Conversations with Philatelists? When, how do we watch it? What's going on?
Conversations with Philatelists every Monday around 7, I think. We post videos on YouTube. They're also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere. And we just talk to different philatelists from all over the globe. We spoke with Graham, episode 8. That was 9 months ago. We've got about 50-something episodes now.
And we try and keep it interesting. We try not to just talk to collectors and exhibitors and authors. We try and branch out, whether it's somebody from the USPS, a paper restoration expert, or just people who you might not think of as. We've talked to a couple of professors whose research revolves around the post office. So we really try and keep it again, not just this person collects this stamp issue. We want it to be as diverse and varied as possible. Conversations with Philatelists. Our website is philatelypodcast.com, and our email is philatelypodcast@gmail.com. Michael is Michael J. Court on Twitter. I'm Charles L. Epting. Or you can probably just find us because we retweet a lot of what Graham posts.
That was a great conversation, and again, I learned a lot. I'm really excited to see what this stamp ends up going for, as well as what kind of attention it brings to our wonderful hobby. If you haven't already done so, check out Conversations with Philatelists and subscribe to their YouTube channel. I'll leave their link, as well as a number of interesting links, in the video description below, so check them out. And if you're watching this after the auction, I have a link there as well to what the end result is. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button as well as subscribe and comment below. Would you spend $15 million on a stamp? And what do you think the end price is going to be? I always enjoy reading through your comments. Oh, and I'm a little behind in my mail. It's a bit overwhelming, so I better be doing a few episodes on mail soon. So stay tuned. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching and happy exploring.